This is a lemon, very simple lemon. And if I turn off that layer, it's on top right now because I don't need that. Again, it's a linked file, not embedded, so it has the big X through it. In my links panel, it shows the location of the actual file that is linked, and it's a JPEG, it's a CMYK color space. It has the pixels per inch as it's actually being used, and the actual physical dimensions of the file is 726 by 700 pixels, scaling, etc. So that's what links are all about. Hide that. Command plus on the keyboard to zoom in, Command minus to zoom out, or I can use the magnifying glass. I'm going to close the sushi here. And this is a pattern made from the ink blob that is one of the default symbols. So I dragged it onto there. I made it smaller because if you have a big symbol, you're going to have a really big brush. I changed the color of it. Actually, see any color to that? Because it's a symbol. But if I object expand, it now becomes vectors, and I can change the color of it if I wanted this color. This has a brush swatch to it that I also copied here, so I don't know if that will interfere with making a brush out of it. Let's try this, scatter brush. I can do that. And actually, let me cancel that. I'm gonna make a pattern brush. Drag it here and make a pattern brush. And you see there it's a pattern. If I want to be able to change the color, I can use tints and shades, or hue shift. We'll try that one. You can change how pieces fit to the curves. If you had different images for the corner elements, you could change them. I'm going to drag my symbol, which is now just vectors, and make a pattern brush. And I think I'll make the tint and shades color method. And then I'll apply that to this. And you can see this has a red stroke applied to it, so it came out more red. I could try some different colors in here and keep changing the stroke color. But a pattern will fill the path with a consistently placed group of objects. This is an art brush made from the tree. You can make an art brush out of a bug. And take the bug and drop it on here and say this is going to be an art brush. I'm just going to leave it at the defaults. I might use tints and shades on this also. And let's say I apply that new bug brush to this, and it's wrapping a bug around as a stroke, and it's colored purple because this is purple. If I take this bug scatter brush that I've made, again, clicking on that every time, color method, tints and shades, and then as I change the stroke color, I'll get different color bugs. You can do some gradient fills. Here's one that's just divided into 4 cells, so that means that the mesh tool was only dropped on there once. Here, I'll delete this and make a copy down here. Copy. And mesh tool, click in the middle. Then if I take some yellow and just drop it here, I get sort of a nice lemon. Finally, I've got this other effect here where if you'll notice, this is actually, I'm going to double click, go into this group, because part of this is a stroke that became an object and the other part is the object. And I'll delete that and show you how that was done. Let's say this had a red stroke on it. It was a fat red stroke. If it was that fat, about this fat. And if I go to the object pull down and find expand, I can expand the fill and the stroke. And what happens is, and again, it makes a group. So I'm going to double click and go into the group here. It makes an object out of the stroke. And that means you can now put a stroke on what had been the stroke. So that's how that works. How might you use that? Well, One place you see that used a lot is in things like logos or billboards or other advertising effects. When working with type that you are going to convert to an object in order to achieve these effects, you want to decide what your spacing is beforehand. Anything about the characters, the weight of the character, the font, if you want it italics or not, you have to decide all that before you do the conversion, because once you've converted it to objects, it's no longer editable type. So I'm going to set this for optical kerning, which is better letter spacing. I could put a stroke around this and make it about 10 points. But you'll notice that the stroke really chokes the letter forms. As type, you can't set the path to the outside. It doesn't work. But once you Command-Shift-O, convert this to objects or outlines or vector paths or Bezier curves. Command-Y, go into wireframe. You can see that these are the actual anchor points and vector curves that define the font within the font file. Command-Y, return to preview mode. Now I can set the paths to the outside. Now before I go further, I'm going to Command-Shift-G, ungroup these so that these are all separate objects rather than a group of objects. And then I'm going to use Pathfinder Unite to make them into a single compound path. Under Object Pull-Down, find Expand Appearance, and this now creates a new object out of what had been a path. If I Command-Shift-G, ungroup that, Command-Shift-G, ungroup the letters, Command-Shift-G, ungroup each pair of objects, which is what had been the fill of the letter plus the new shape made from the outline or the stroke. And then I would hold the Shift key. So I would Command-Shift-G, ungroup that. Select all of the letters and use Pathfinder to unite those into a single object. Set that to the back. And then select everything, hold the Shift key and click on one of the black letters to deselect that, and then merge those into a single shape. So now I have a single path that is the outline of the letters and another one that is the original letters. Two things you can do here. You can set the stroke and add another stroke onto what had been a stroke. And you could set that to the outside. Another way to do this, I'm going to go back to the original type again. Okay, I converted it to an object. Command-Shift-O. I'm going to reduce the size of the stroke, about 2 points. Maybe we'll invert the color on that. You can use offset path, object, path, offset path. And I got this at 11 points, that's fine. And then Command-Shift-G, ungroup that. Again, combine the letter forms back into a single compound path. Change that to black so we can identify it. Select these others. Is that part of that one? Let's find out. Yes, okay. Select these offset paths and combine them into a single object with Unite shape mode. So I've got my letters and I've got my outline, and then I could make this no fill and a red stroke. I could have a stroke or not have a stroke on this one. So that's another way to achieve that effect. So for 3B, I would like to see at least one object that you have used that conversion. So for example, this one here, object, expand appearance, ungroup, and that's selected. Shift-G, Command-Shift-G, select all of this, hold the Shift key to deselect the grapes, and then do Unite, okay. And another thing you can do with this Let me do this actually on my lemon. I'm going to go back to when these were two shapes, Command Y. You can see they overlap. So I could use Pathfinder Divide to make this into 3 objects, where I could then color them separately or ungroup them, and I could remove this one in the middle. Or you could do that selecting both of these and use the exclude to get the same effect. And then I could change this back to, say, a lemon color as a separate object. Oh, looks like a lime. Scatter brushes, explore scatter brushes, make your own scatter brushes, make your own pattern brushes. I want the scatter brushes to really scatter, because if you don't apply any random elements to the scatter, then you haven't got a scatter brush, you've just got a pattern brush. And I like to see at least one object where you have a fairly simple stroke on something that you have converted to another object. I'm going to change this to something fairly simple like that, make it fatter. That's probably too fat. And object, expand appearance, and Shift G, ungroup it, or you can right click and ungroup, or you can find in the object pull down, ungroup. And there's 2 separate objects. You could scale that up so it's like floating around the object, or you could use something on the Pathfinder palette to achieve a different effect. Save your best 12 solutions as your last name DL3B.ai as a native Illustrator format, and your last name DL3B.pdf as a portable document format file. Combine those in a zip archive and submit it your last name DL3B.zip.